Hi, everybody. It's Amalia, founder of S.T.E.M Braids and Beyond, and host of the Silver Bullet S.T.E.M podcast. Today, I have an incredible guest to introduce to the audience. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Lorelle Reid. I'm currently the Director of Engineering for Estée Lauder companies, and I'm happy to be here.
How can anybody get in touch with you if they need to?
I'll share my LinkedIn. That's probably the best way.
Awesome. So, how did you get into S.T.E.M?
So I studied computer science. I was always interested in tech as a child. I think that most girls like want purses or makeup when they're growing up, and I always was taking apart computers and pens and different things. So originally I was pre-med, and that didn't really work out. So I ended up being computer science, and that's kind of how I got into it. I was a computer engineer. I was a software engineer for several years, and then I was like the engineering manager. And then I was the head of engineering for a publishing company. And then now I'm the director of engineering for Estee Lauder.
Makes sense. So, what life event happened that led you to pursue the path of engineering? Was it a TV show you were exposed to it at a young age? School? What was that connection for you?
Well, I was a runway model to start out with. So like from like 15, I was a model at the time, and I did not think that I would be in engineering for sure. And I broke something on my computer actually. And when I looked up the fix for it, it was like a command line prompt, and it was kind of this Mr. Robot moment where it looked cool, and I just kind of got into it like that. So I think that's what led me into it. It was a like this Matrix moment, and it was like red pill, blue pill, and I decided to like go into it.
What was your childhood dream job? You said you started out in modeling and now you're in STEM. Was modeling your childhood dream job?
Oh God, no. I was discovered in like a Nordstrom's. I love to eat food, so that was definitely not like a dream job. I think I wanted to be like a movie star and a marine biologist at the same time.
Wow.
You're a kid, anything's possible.
Anything's possible.
Yeah.
What was your childhood like?
It was great, honestly. Like so all the time, I'm like, can we go back there? Like those are like great times. Shout out to my parents; they did a great job. Like every holiday was so fantastic. So I really appreciated that, and I think one day when I have kids, I can't wait to relive those moments.
Yes.
But yeah,
What part of the States were you raised in?
I'm from Chicago.
So you were raised in Chicago.
Yeah, born and
Oh,
raised
nice.
Chicago.
Oh, gotcha.
It's cold. It's like great, like 5 months out of the year, but like that those other times, not great. Not great.
in hindsight, what do you wish you knew now about STEM access as a way to get more underrepresented kids into STEM?
I think one of the most important things is instilling confidence to do anything. And just because, like, you will fail a lot. So there's something that engineers say stack overflow and chill. Like, you spend a lot of times, like, Googling things, failing, your code not compiling, and then trying again. And I think that it looks very overwhelming at first when you start writing code and then you see other people's code. And there's a lot of like trial and error, and that is everyone's experience. And I think that when you start out, especially when you're using like reference codes. When you start at a company, you're usually looking at like older engineers' code and you're using that as reference code, and you're basically just trying to keep up. And I think that a lot of people don't realize that that's everyone's experience. I mean, I'm sure there's like a few like geniuses out there who just start out like, writing a lot of algorithms. But most people start out that way. So it's just like continue to iterate and try and fail and refactor, and really focus on that. And I don't think that we put enough emphasis on like that failing aspect being part of the process.
Gotcha. So when we think about engineering, we think about maybe technology, something mechanical. What does engineering have to do with a beauty product?
So the websites. So for me, it's we have Estee Lauder companies is actually 41 brands. We purchased Tom Ford last year for I think it's like $4 billion. So
Wow.
we all of those websites need to run so you can buy things online. I personally rarely buy something in a store. So if I can't get it online, is it really worth buying? So part of my job is to make sure those products are accessible online, but more than that, make sure that it's merchandised and stored appropriately. on in the digital space, and so that you, the consumer, can find it. So I think it's really important to make things accessible and easy for people to find so that by the time the consumer gets there, it's a very easy experience. But there's a lot that goes into that, especially at a large company to get to that point. So our brands include MAC, in addition to Estee Lauder, MAC, Bumble and Bumble, Too Faced, Tom Ford, La Mer, like it's a long list. So all of those sites, there's a permutation with the locales and different, yeah, I think it's 400 sites. So and we're doing a modernization, which means that we're upgrading the platform from an older stack to a newer one. So imagine doing that times 400.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hats off to you. What is the most surprising thing about the industry you're in as it relates to STEM?
I think maybe something that's not surprising is that like a lot of stereotypes tend to be true. There's not a lot of women. There's not a lot of diversity. It really is kind of like what you would assume. That there's a lot of like stereotypicalness that I think is in development. I happen to be an anomaly, so I think I get these questions like, "How do you survive?" And I'm like, I don't really think about it. But a lot of that tends to be true. I'm hoping that that changes is like as the generations kind of roll in, but a lot of that tends to be true. And then also how much reference code goes into it. So, I mean, I think how much creativity we still need to have and how much reference code still exists in a lot of our products. And code debt, how much code debt every company is. I think that maybe that's a bigger one. When you go into a company, so I've worked with Nike, Samsung, like a lot of bigger companies, and you would think that they have these like super modernized stacks, and they don't. Like every big company behind like that big shiny door is
Right.
very like legacy code and a lot of code debt, and you would be shocked about, I mean, sometimes these companies are running with like stick and glue. So it's amazing just how we've, persisted.
Gotcha. Looking at where you are today, looking back on your journey, do you see elements of your childhood that could have made you a great fit for this job and maybe made you wish you had started this field or career earlier, like being developed in your childhood?
Yeah, definitely. I was always interested in like logic and patterns. My parents would buy me these like logic books, where you would kind of, have to do all of these like deductive reasoning things. So I think code is all about patterns, writing patterns, seeing them to find redundancies, etc., and then writing algorithms to solve problems. And I think that that kind of like mindset and pragmatism really goes into a lot of the work that we do. So if you have a mind like that, I think that you would be great in the STEM field. Also, I'm not a creative. Like my parents didn't recognize my own self-portrait. So I'm not yeah, I can't draw. So, there was only a couple other routes we could go.
What sort of working class jobs has skills that you think are easily transferable to the STEM field as it is in you, as it relates to your industry?
That's a good question. Music, I don't like music teachers. I think anything with like theory, so like music theory, things like that. There's a lot of studies that show music is highly related to code. Also, I think, and this is just left field, people who work with cars and or watchmakers, because it's like there's like a tediousness about having to put together all these parts in like the right order and things like that, and kind of figuring out how to like put in the best order. And it kind of goes back to that, like reducing redundancies if you're finding patterns in that kind of way. So just like those, anything that has to do with like parts and manufacturing and kind of finding that order, I think could be, useful.
So today you are a manager of a department. Throughout your career, though, did you ever feel imposter syndrome, and how did you deal with it?
Yeah, I actually gave a talk about for MongoDB about imposter syndrome and kind of finding your voice in that. And I think everybody feels imposter syndrome all the time. I rose to leadership like at a relatively young age, which means that a lot of the people that I lead are going to be much older than me.
Mm,
And so that in and of itself ends up giving you a sense of imposter syndrome because just in the age aspect of, should I be here? Have I learned enough? And so you kind of have to lean on your belief in yourself that's unfounded. Like I can do this because I believe in myself. I wanted to be here and like just prove it to yourself. So that exists. I don't think you're doing it right unless you actually have imposter syndrome. That should creep up. Otherwise, you're maybe just like a narcissist. I don't know, but I think it's actually healthy to have like a bit of imposter syndrome. So it definitely creeps up all the time.
would you say that, because you said you rose to leadership at a young age, was mentorship a critical part of that rise?
I had a couple of key mentors along the way for sure. I unfortunately would say that there wasn't a lot of women around the time that I was coming up. So I didn't have, and there was certainly like nobody that really looked like me. So I didn't have a lot of people to lean on in that respect. But like there's certainly the key people that were helpful. I did feel like more of a lone wolf in my journey. So that's why mentorship is really important to me now to be a mentor and to kind of like help other people on that journey just to show that you're not alone. And I think it's also about representation, just being a representative and having someone see that maybe you're not alone will help one other person. Maybe somebody will reach out or just feel like, okay, well, that person is in that same arena. I could do that too. And that in and of itself is helpful. So I think that's something that I strive to do because it
Okay,
wasn't
so what
available to me.
got you. What I hear a lot though is the underpinning of resilience in your journey. What does that mean, look like, or feel to you?
Yeah, it's actually like if I ever get a tattoo, it'll be resilience. Or it is what it is. I when I was in fifth grade, I wrote the story called The Burning Mark of Resilience, and
Mm,
which is weird now because my mom saved it and I found it a couple of years ago. It's kind of weird for like a fifth grader to be writing something like that. But it was about like this young girl kind of having this burning mark of resilience and going through all these like life trials and also I kind of asked my mom, like, like, shouldn't you have checked in and been like, like, Lorelle, what's going on? But at the same time, I think that that's really been in my life something that has been a huge part of me, like going through all these trials and then coming through it and then like always being stronger for it. And so now it's a huge part of me, having to go through like various trials in my life and like these trials and tribulations being a part of my journey and character. And instead of being defeated by it, like recognizing it when it appears and being like, okay, this is another challenge we're going through. Like this is going to make us stronger and really like recognizing it when it appears versus being defeated by it up front. But it's taken and I had to learn that I think at a much earlier age for some reason than other people. So it is what it is. Like, and that's why I say
Why
those are
do
my
you,
two tattoos,
why
resilience, and
did
it is what it is.
why did you have to learn it a lot earlier or differently to most people? Why do you feel that way?
I think a lot of things just like randomly, it's kind of like these random things would happen in my life where it's like unexplainable events that were quite challenging and unconnected and just made that journey quite difficult. In addition to the fact that what I chose to do with my life and like who I was, I never fit into a box. So, I might fit into one, arena, but that wasn't going to work somewhere else. And so that also makes it challenging for you to find kind of a group or something to fit in with. So
Mhm.
luckily for me, I don't know if it's an Aquarius thing, but it's just not something that I ever really cared about being a part of. I never needed to feel belonging to something. So it just and you end up being this kind of natural leader by default, just because it is what it is. And I think that so that's been a part of my journey. But I think that also part of that journey is hoping that maybe I can mentor someone else so they don't have to feel like that because perhaps they don't have that same makeup and it can be it can be challenging, to say the least. And so I think, and it can be confusing at the same time. And certainly, I think there's more resources available with certainly with social media and people connecting in ways that they haven't before. But at the time that like less of that was available to me. So I love to see the way that people are connecting now and like finding communities and homes, and that's really great. So I hope that that continues, and I think that will help the numbers and diversity in some of these fields that are super lucrative, but still not seeing the numbers that they should.
Gotcha. So what does STEM mean to you?
A field of the future, really. It really just means the future, innovation, um, and everything that I really dedicated my life to. But the future, really, the present and the future.
That's interesting that you would say that. So a lot of people are afraid that AI would take away all the jobs. Do you feel like personnel is still needed, or in the future that STEM represents, or is it all going to be replaced by AI of some sort?
I don't think it'll all be replaced. I certainly think that there are concerns that we should be aware of. And if you don't get ahead of it, like the technology will get ahead of you. And I think we saw some of that happen with social media, and the governance around that happened way later than it needed to. And there were some unfortunate results with that that you can see in mental health today. And the governance around that is like still catching up, right? And I think that they're trying to do a better job right now around AI, getting in front of it now. But we'll kind of see how that pans out. There are great things that can come of it in terms of helping people out, but you know, with great responsibility, what is the saying? With great power comes great responsibility, and do you really trust everyone to use, like humanity to use that power with the same responsibility? Probably not.
Absolutely.
So I think that my concern is that like entrusting like everyone to use great power responsibly in the same way is uh you know a fallacy of sorts. So I certainly think that there are concerns. I certainly think big corporations will look to replace, and even in mine, like it's a tough economy right now, and there are areas that people are looking to reduce across the board, and that's just like a reality of the current climate, and that will continue. So if there are other areas that can be reduced by technology, as a person in leadership, I would be foolish to not look at that. And from a business perspective, to not look
Mhm.
at that and be like, why would I not do that? From a human perspective, that's someone's job, that's someone's family, that's someone's livelihood. So you like, and that's part of like my challenge in being in leadership. You have to like kind of like marry those two. But currently, like my responsibility is to my job, right? It's like I'm employed. So yeah, I think that those are the concerns that like I have. It's like that humanness versus what's good for like a company. And so
Mhm.
like those are two very different things. But realistically, like sometimes what's better for the company would be to go to replace like a workforce with AI if you could. And I try to automate as much as I can now,
Yeah.
like QA, like for example, if like we should not be doing manual testing on things, we're always trying to like automate things, but that also could eliminate jobs, and that's
Mhm.
something that we actually look to do often. But what does that mean for actual people who are doing those jobs? But it's inefficient at the same time.
Right.
So inefficiency costs money.
Gotcha. Well, thank you so much for being a guest today. Thank you guys, everybody, for checking this video.